Good morning. This week we're going to start some seascapes, which are really kind of fun and pretty forgiving, actually. And seascapes, in my humble opinion, are mostly about the sea and the sky. And so I'm going to do a quick little exercise similar to what we did with the landscapes. This piece of paper is much smaller, and I've scored off only 12 little vignettes here, thumbnails, and we'll do just by applying a limited palette, just several different color shapes and several different shapes that could be skies. I'm going to be using from our original colors, I'm going to be using cerulean blue, because cerulean blue is really about skies. I have my cerulean blue, which is a cool yellow. You could use lemon yellow also, which is a cool. I can use nickel azo. I can use a little bit of, I could put alizarin out, but I don't think I'm going to use very much of it. This is cerulean, that's manganese, which is very transparent, like cerulean. Ultramarine. I'm actually going to use some indigo. Duke Ellington did a poem that had pink and blue indigo in the skies, and I'll remember that forever. And let's see. I have my red. And then I'm going to put one warm red out just to have, maybe for mixing. But these are going to be the colors that I will be using on these little thumbnails. This is going to end up being more about letting colors bleed into one another, letting it be wet and wet, leaving a couple of hard edges, so you'll have soft and hard edges. But I'll tell you what, doing skies over the course of your painting career is going to be a lifelong study. There are millions of ways to make the sky look, make your painting look like sky. And this little exercise of 12 or 24 or however many you do, this will be an exercise on understanding and allowing yourself to be free and liking all different kinds of skies and being very forgiving with the paint. In this case, this is a lesson also in allowing the water to work for you. This is watercolors, so we're going to use the water to help us create our skies. I'm going to be using one round and a couple of flats, and I'm going to just wet. I'm going to wet the whole thing first of all. Might have to go back and wet something. I actually don't want to wet every square inch, literally. But you can, I don't know if you can see in this light, there are some hard edges, some places where the water didn't get to. That's going to help us in making our skies. They're all different wetnesses, if that's a word. So I'm going to start by doing pretty predictable skies. Cerulean blue is often used, and just make some swipes with that. And again, we think about horizons not being right through the middle, so my horizons are going to vary. And deliberately, I want some of this to bleed. And I'm not going to go back in and fiddle with them. That's ultramarine. That can kind of indicate a stormy sky. It's a little bit of Quin Gold. I might even use a little raw sienna. Okay, that's one. Let it bleed even. You can move it around. Now think about doing these on a larger piece of paper. Once you put the water down and once you put the color in, let it be. Don't go back and fiddle with it, because that's the way you'll get weird marks. I'm moving this, what paint is on there, around, and it's becoming just a really wonderful wet and wet sky. And I'm going to do that with most of these. Why don't we reverse the colors? That's too dry already. It dried out quickly here in my studio. That needs to have more blue water. It's still wet and wet in these little tiny squares, but try these in the little tiny squares. It'll help you move the wet and wet. I think this is more going to be thought of as a lesson in wet and wet, because with the sea and the sky, you've got a lot of moisture anyway. I like how that's bleeding right there, but I've also saved a hard edge over here. Okay, let's try a different one now. I'm going to deliberately hope to leave some dry in a couple of these. Look at it, looks like rain. Isn't that fun? Now when you're working with wet and wet, you want to pick up these beads that end up happening. Beads of water coming down by the tape. I'm really liking how that's going. Deliberately leaving some dry. I I put a little bit of my warmer red in this sky, so it looked like a sunset. Cool. So on the sea, what's in the sky is reflected on the sea, so I'm going to do that too. Oh well, I've got a little bit of a burst of white there, which could be the horizon. Let's get a Pacific Northwest. Kind of a blue with some yellow in it so that I can make it a kind of a greenish sky, because you notice that a lot of our skies sometimes when they're cloudy look green. Deliberate bleeding there. So every color and every color right there. Some of you can see some of the edges have been deliberately left hard edge, and some where the paint has mingled. That's really a good thing. So what this really ends up being is a playful time. Look at how this, because I went back in, it made a blossom, but it works okay with the sky. So I'm just going to continue to finish these off in whatever way, and I encourage you to do the same. As I showed you, those of you who were on the Zoom call this morning, these are just some little thumbnails of how to approach various skies and seascapes. They're washes. There's a limited palette, and there's no wrong way to do this. It's just an exploratory exercise for you to see how many ways you can, I mean, it becomes endless, but how many ways you can create skies, sky color, shorelines. There's no perfect one way. We have stormy skies here. We have kind of a sunset over the water here. This is kind of a rainy. I see it as rain. You might not. But they're all wet and wet little studies and little really doodles to get you going for your seascapes.